Hi, everybody. Dan Illman along with Ashley Mailloux taking a look at the feature race at Emerald Downs on Sunday. And not only the feature race at Emerald Downs on Sunday, the feature race, the entire Pacific Northwest for the entire year. Here's the field for the Longacres Mile. And we've got a big field going a mile on the dirt. It's a short run into the first turn at Emerald. So these horses on the outside are going to have to work a little bit to get good position. But it's nice to see the defending champion back in action. And that is the number 9. And 5-Star General just looked really good winning this race last year. And I think he's coming into the 2024 edition in similarly good form.
Yeah, he is such a cool horse. An 8-year-old who's won 12 times from those 38 starts. And he can win on the lead. He can sit just off the pace setter and try to get to them late. And just a really nice horse. Would love to, have a horse like this. And you mentioned, has he experienced at Emerald Downs? You look at last year's edition of the race, how game he was. And be very curious to see if Joe Bravo still tries to make it out. I know he's booked in a couple of places this weekend, but just looking outside of him, I think, Dan, this is a great field. There's 11 other horses to look at, some horses that have done very well, whether it be at Emerald or other circuits, and some new faces. There's connections that move horses from other jurisdictions just for this, right? Looking at horses like Giant Game, a grade 3 winner. You have the 5, Phantom Ride, who was playing for a pretty hefty price tag in his most recent outing. I think top to bottom, it's an interesting group.
And taking a look at 9 through 12 on our entry card, you do see the morning line favorite in here, that being 5-Star General. Just a cool horse. Again, a stakes winner in New York as a 2-year-old. He won the British Columbia Derby, I think, at 3. It seems like he competes in the Longacres Mile every year, and he got the win last year. He's a speedy horse. Here's the Timeform US pace projector. 5-Star General is expected to make the lead, but note that red bar, which indicates a fast pace. I agree with that assessment. You've got some stretch out sprinters in here, most notably the 1 and the 2, that can take advantage of their comfortable inside posts and make the 9 work a bit going into the first turn.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a couple of horses near or on the lead, and there's going to be a cavalry charge right behind them. That you talk about horses coming out of sprint races that have been fast, but I look at horses such as the 7 Arma who's been a couple of lengths off some very quick races, including that 6.5 furlong Governor's last time out. There's a couple of deep closers in here, but I think that, main group or two, there's going to be 2 main groups, and they're both going to have several horses in them.
And several horses are coming out of the Governor's Stakes, going 6.5 at Emerald, including the number 1 Neiman. Let's take a look at that replay. I thought Neiman was on the pace and maybe doing a lot of the dirty work for some of these closers, especially horses on the outside. That's Arma, and coming from way, way off the pace was Slew's Whiz. So while Neiman ends up finishing 3rd, I think the fact that he did all that work in the early portion of the race makes me not want to actually hold this loss against him too much. I am concerned about him stretching out in distance in a fast-paced scenario, however.
He's never gone further than 6.5, so now he has to go to a mile, and it's not an easy way to do it. Maybe if they would have tried him in an allowance optional claiming event or something that he would have been eligible against the local horses to get him ready for this, I'd feel a little bit better. And looking at his workouts, he does have a drill, but it's only going 5/8. I'm not seeing anything else to really get him going in terms of the distance in here. And I do agree with the Governors. I thought it was a good performance from him. He was gritty and he hung around as long as he could. He was just 3rd best behind a couple of horses who, unfortunately for him, he has to face again.
Clovis Connection is the number 2. He won his final 4 starts of 2023, including a couple of stakes races sprinting at Emerald. He's won over the distance of ground in the past. Here's his most recent race down at Pleasanton. This is the Oak Tree Sprint. While only a 6 furlong race, I like the way he asserts himself right at this point, just sort of blasting by the 2 horses to his inside and stays about his business. He's run some fast races in the past. Maybe he's slightly better on the synthetic, but he also likes to win races on the dirt. Very enviable lifetime winning record, 9 for 14.
And his best buyer was on the dirt. We saw the 93 back at one of the fair circuits last year. Consistent type. And, you look at who he's had to face. He's faced some nice horses throughout his career. I don't want to, take that away from him. Johnny Padres, Lamas, Belnikov, and obviously he didn't perform well in that race where 2 of those horses exit. But even going down the page a little further, I feel like he's had to face some nice horses and has been okay in them. He has early foot. I don't think necessarily in here that he's going to be on the lead. I don't think he's quick enough, but I do think he'll get a good position where he can save ground here, especially stretching back out in distance to a mile.
Fast pace works well for Slew's Whiz. We saw him get up for the dead heat last time out in the Governors. He won the mile, going sprint to route in 2022. He was a good third in this race last year, and it looks like he's going to get a setup. Just a cool Washington bred representing the home state. He's going to be running at the end.
Yeah, and I think looking at, how the pace setup probably works from here, I think the difference between his two Longacres Miles, I do think the 1-2 back, he was a little bit closer to it. And pretty far back last time out. So curious to see what the tactics will be. He had a nice win, though, last time out. He's going to go around 2 turns for the first time this year, which I don't mind him stretching out. He's been just fine at the mile distance. He'll get the pace set up that he needs, and the help is what I was trying to say there. But I just wonder, with this year's edition, I feel like it might be even a little bit more stacked than last year, that he might just have too much to do late.
The 4 is DeShambeau, and this horse finished 4th in the Governors last time out, but it was his first start back at the Downs off a little bit of a layoff. He was close enough to that fast pace, got into a little bit of a jam at some point. I think DeShambeau can improve second off the layoff, but as you said, this is a pretty deep edition of the mile, so he's going to have to improve a lot.
Yeah, I think he's another one. Stretching out, that should be good for him. I think he did have some problems last time off after that little bit of a freshening. The thing that I look at him more and more is just his figures. As we've talked about, I just think his figures are a little bit on the lower side compared to others in here. And maybe he'll get the right setup that he needs in terms of trip as well. I just don't know against this group.
Fascinating entrant up next in the 5, Phantom Ride, claimed out of his last 2 races at Churchill Downs. I wonder if they claimed him to run him in the mile. It was a good performance last time out, finishing 3rd. He was in for 62.5, so that's a legitimate price for a claim. He's going to get tested here, though. I think they show up in the mile. They see that this field comes up stacked, so he'll have to improve.
It's expensive, $62,500, especially in the prior start. He was in for 32. Yeah. Then his connections that claim him, they bump him up and they lose him. So even though he didn't win, they made money on that end of the deal. He was only in the barn for 3 weeks and he was gone again. One of the things I wonder, if you go down the page, some of his best races as of recent, they've been at Oaklawn Park. Fared very well down there against some of those races. But again, the meet's not easy down there. And I still like that once you get outside of Oaklawn, while it was against sometimes lesser competition, both of his races are at Churchill have been very good. And the trips that he kind of got a nice trip, just a couple of lengths off the pace, and tried to get it done and just came up just a tad short in both of them. So from a consistency angle, I think he's one to use. I think in terms of trips, he's very good. And we'll see. I talked about the 4 in terms of figures being a little bit on the light side. He is too. I just wonder, though, in terms of what he's been facing, to me, it's probably a little bit better than those local horses, even at the top level.
Bellator is up next, and although all of his lifetime wins have come on synthetic, he ran really well in the mile last year, finishing 2nd, then embarked on turf and synth races. His last start was the Pleasanton Mile. Prince Abu Dhabi's also in this race, coming out of the Pleasanton Mile. He saved ground. Prince Abu Dhabi took the long way around. I was a little bit disappointed with Bellator's race last time out.
I was too. I do think the winner has proved himself to be quite the real deal and a very nice horse regardless of surface, but I just couldn't figure out why he wasn't able to make up any ground in those final stages. To me, there was no excuse thinking 3rd start off the layoff. He's been okay on the dirt in the past. It hasn't been an issue. And to me, he took a big step backwards. So that I don't love about him. I do think if you look at some of his races last year, even in that same race that was his prep race for this, he performed better. That has me asking some questions, but again, go down. When you look at a race, say the race at Golden Gate at the beginning of June, or even his turf race, the San Francisco Mile this year was a deep field. And look who won that, the horse that beat him last time as well. Both of those performances, I think, would put him in the mix, but a little bit of a reservation on the last out. If you do like him, though, you're going to get better value.
Arma was 4th in the mile last year, and then he ran in a lot of synthetic and turf races in California. And I wonder if Justin Evans dipped in for the 25 3 starts back, saying, listen, he's better on the dirt. I want to run him there, hoping to get him back to the mile. And we saw last time out in the Governors, he was really game, tracking that solid pace and getting there for the dead heat. He's legitimately classy enough to win this race, and he's also tactical enough to work out a trip in the second flight or so.
And I think looking at his dirt race that they claimed him out of, I just don't think he handled an off track. Look at him since then, both really good performances, was able to get back to numbers that are more within his wheelhouse. And the way that he won 2 starts back was eye-catching. It was a very easy win for him. And then to see that he had to take that step forward, facing stakes competition, he was able to do that again and just ended up being in a dead heat there. But the top two were clear of the field. That was cutting back to 6.5. I do like the angle now with some of these horses now stretching back out.
Giant Game is up next. He's also conditioned by Evans. He was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile back in 2021 and only his third lifetime start. And he's gone on to do some good things. He won the Cornhusker Handicap and actually competed in the Whitney and the Charlestown Classic last year. I just wonder if he's lost his way. I think he really fits well from a class standpoint. His best race puts him squarely in the mix, but he's also kind of a speedy type that could get caught up in this fast pace. And I just don't love his recent form, although he's been against some toughies.
Yeah, he is a speedy type, but I don't know if he is necessarily as keen early as he used to be. When we saw it in the Cornhusker and races like that, even the Whitney, he wanted the lead. Even in the Charlestown Classic, they tried to get it. He had post 2 in there and had a better chance. I'm not going to hold the Bing Crosby against him at all. I would draw a line through it. It was 6 furlongs, grade 1. The Chosen Brawn simply is a freak, especially out in California. So I'm not going to read into that too much. I agree with what you said, though, Dan. He fits. I mean, this is a race where it makes sense why he's showing up here. It's still a nice purse, $150,000. But to me, 2024, just overall, lots of questions. They've tried different things. They sent him to California. Now he goes to Emerald Downs. Little bit of uncertainty around him.
While 5-Star General is projected to make the lead in the mile, keep in mind that he sat off another horse last year and was able to prevail. And maybe breaking from the outside, he lets sort of the 2 stretch-out sprinters from the 2 inside posts go, and he sits a nice pace-tracking trip while 3 wide. Here's his most recent race at Horseshoe, Indianapolis. It's the Schuster Memorial. He just got caught. Look at those fractions. 22-2, 45, 8-4, and he's still plugging away down on the inside. It's a good third, to be sure.
Yeah, the track was certainly fast that day at Horseshoe Indy. It was a big day of racing, right? Looking at Indiana Derby weekend out there. I thought it was a good performance. I'm sure he gets beat, but I thought his effort prior to that was a really game effort. That was a tough race in terms of, and generally at Churchill, even going back 3 races ago. He's consistent. I think you can count on him time and time again. His early foot puts him in a good position, and it's just crazy to see how he is transformed, where you look at all those starts at Emerald that he had in a row and he just really wasn't firing. Look at him the last 2 years. I mean, just a completely different animal who's really seems to get better with age. And, I think anything close to, say, that effort 2 back would probably put him in the winner's circle once again.
Evans claimed surprisingly perfect for $10,000 in March at Turf Paradise. The horse has won 4 of his last 5 starts. Now, I know a lot of those races were against much weaker company, but this is a 21-time winner who certainly deserves his chance against the big boys. Probably has to run one of his faster figures, however.
Talking about his record and how much he was claimed for, he's already made $60,000 this year at the age of 10. Very fruitful claim, and you can't take anything away from his last 3 races, one of which was 2 back, a career best effort for him. And I know he drew clear in there, and they were asking him in the stretch. So, he took another win after that, and he had to step up in class, and it wasn't as easy as a win, but his stalking style has worked out very well for him in those last 3. And the big thing, he's going to get a different rider in this spot.
Prince Abu Dhabi is the number 11 stakes winner at Emerald last summer. He's a very versatile horse. He runs well on dirt, he runs well on synth, he runs well sprinting, and he runs well going 2 turns. Here's the Pleasanton Mile last time out. It's tough to win when you're hung out 6 wide at the quarter pole and into the stretch, and that was the case with Prince Abu Dhabi, who loomed at the quarter pole, and then I think that ground loss took its toll. He still grinds on to finish 3rd with a co-career best Buyer speed figure of 90. Interesting to see that they're putting the blinkers on him, maybe to get him to focus a little bit more. You saw him kind of drift in a little bit when he was bumped turning for home. It's all about whether he can work out a trip. Post 11 is not easy going a mile in Emerald.
I don't think we'll see a change in his tactics. I think we'll get that same sort of trip that we see in those last few. I do think, as you've mentioned, the blinkers are more for a focus thing rather than speed or anything else. And when you look at the Pleasanton Mile, to me, his performance was good, considering that he was kind of all over the place in those final stages. We talked about other horses maybe being disappointing in that spot. I think he needed to do that. And I think what helped him take a step forward in comparison to his other dirt race this year was the added ground. I don't think he wanted to go 6.5 in the Kona Gold. I think, again, we keep on talking about the horses, Happy Jack and the Chosen Run, different ball game. So to me, he's a very logical contender in here. And I just wonder if he's going to continue to take steps forward off of those last 2.
And Muncie completes this very talented group of horses in the mile, 30-1 on the morning line. Just really didn't fire his best shot in the Governors. Now, this guy's really a one-run closer. Breaking from post 12, you just expect him to drop back and try to make one run after saving as much ground as possible on the first turn and into the backstretch. The problem is his figures just pale in comparison to the top contenders, so he really needs a meltdown.
He does, and I do think the main thing is I think he's more of a one-turn horse. I think a mile too far for him, not just because of his record, because of his running style, and when he's been able to get those really hot fractions because of his running style, he can close from off of it. So that's what happened 2 starts back. I just have a tough time, especially looking at his last out. It was a sprint. The pace was there. He didn't show up, and more importantly, so many that are in this field, they finished in front of him.
Let's take a look at our top picks for the Longacres Mile. If you're a racing nerd like me, just get your lifetime PPs and your formulator for 5-star general. It's really a treat to see stakes wins in New York, Hastings, Emerald, Fairgrounds, Evangeline. He shows up every time, and you're expecting him to show up again.
I do. I think, his early foot's really going to benefit him here. And just looking at his form, even at the age of 8, he's still at the top form that we saw last year. So he's going to be a short price. I see who you use on the top spot as a horse that I really hold in high regard here. I'm going to burst your bubble. I don't think you'll get 12-1 on Prince Abu Dhabi, but I think he's one that little less experienced and trending in the right direction.
I was just going to say, I wondered if that 12-1 was a little bit of a pipe dream off of his last race. I just wonder if we've seen his best yet. We've seen 5-star general's best. It's very, very good and good enough to win this race. But I wonder if Prince Abu Dhabi could take the necessary step forward, blinkers on. 11-9-1-7 for me, 9-5-11-7 for Ashley. What a fun race. It's the Longacres Mile on Sunday at Emerald Downs. Good luck.